In this lesson, we'll learn how portal lights can make huge improvements to our interior lighting results. Okay, so in a scene like this where we have our primary source of illumination being some kind of an outdoor window, a lot of times we'll wind up with these lighting results that look like this, where we have really bright results up here and just some very dark lighting back in here. And the reason for this is because, again, we have very little direct illumination coming from this sunlight. You can see just this tiny little sliver of direct light that we have here, and a lot of the rest of this is just being illuminated by our final gather points. The problem, though, is that there's really just not enough final gather points for these areas back here to be able to reach out and sample and grab the illumination from this outdoor environment and return that back. So to get over this problem, we use a feature called portal lights. And this is, again, going to really be designed to overcome the kind of lighting limitations that we have here, where we're trying to light some kind of an indoor environment through a primarily outdoor light source. Okay, so let's go back into our create list. Let's create a light, and underneath our photometric lights, we have our mental ray sky portal. So let's go ahead and drop this in. Let's switch to my left view. All right, we'll go ahead and drop that in. There we are. I'll go ahead and right-click to complete the creation of this. Now, here's our portal light. You can see it's sort of inside my room, so I'm just going to grab that, pull that out so that it's just outside this window. There we are. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to fit perfectly over this window, just as long as it does a pretty good job of covering that up. So once we have that in place, what we should be able to do is immediately just take a quick render. So once again, I'll press Shift-Q on my keyboard to render this out. And we should see immediately, right away, our lighting has improved tremendously. So now this portal light is basically reaching out behind and sampling some of the illumination from this environment. And then it's piping that illumination back into our room as some kind of a direct illumination source. So huge improvement in our overall lighting here. Now, basically what I'm going to do is come in and go through this same process with some of the other windows and openings that we have throughout this room. So just press and hold the Shift key, Shift drag, and we'll build this as a copy. There we are, and we'll have this cover this window back here. Again, doesn't have to be a perfect covering, just as long as it does a pretty good job of blocking that out. Once again, press and hold my Shift key, click and drag this. We'll make a new portal over here. Switch to my rotate tool, rotate this around. There we are. I'll set this to 0-degree rotation. Or grab this light and move it over here. And this one I can scale out maybe just a little bit more, so that way it's doing a little bit better job of covering that window. Essentially what these portal lights are doing is blocking out the window and covering any kind of final gather points from reaching out and going past. So we're basically blocking final gather rays from coming in, and instead this is now providing direct illumination into our room. So once again, copy that, spin that around so that it fits over this window, rotate that to 90 degrees, and then just try to slide that over. Looks like we could stand to fit that in a little bit better, so I'll just pull that a little bit more forward. Okay, so that should be pretty close. Now, once again, press Shift-Q on my keyboard, and let's see what we have now. All right, and you can see overall now just, again, a huge improvement in the overall lighting of this room. Now, we do still have a few of these kind of annoying little bright hot spots, things like this little area right next to the window. Now, a lot of this may not necessarily be problems with the lights themselves. This actually may be a problem with the materials. So again, keep in mind that these are just very simple material colorations, and because of the fact that we've introduced our gamma correction in one of our earlier lessons, a lot of these things, material-wise, may look a little bit washed out. So before I start to concern myself too much with this, what I like to do is maybe just drop some kind of a very simple material over the entire room. So press the M key on my keyboard, and I'll just right click, go to materials. I'll create a new metal ray material. Whenever I'm going for realism, I always like to rely on these architectural and design materials. These are the metal ray specific materials. These are designed with a lot of physical rules for material interaction, for light interaction. These are really absolutely the best choice whenever it comes to texturing and using highly realistic materials. So with this architectural and design material, if I double click on this, I'm just going to come in and take its reflectivity, bring that all the way down to 0. So that way we don't wind up with something just incredibly shiny here. And basically, I'm just going to grab my entire scene, or all the objects in my scene. Now take this new architectural and design material, and just drop that onto everything. Okay, now let me re-render this, and this will give us now a lot better idea of just how the light is truly interacting with my scene, and whether or not we really do have some areas of concern, things like that. Alright, so that's a little bit better. You can see now by just dropping in this new material, that's actually fixed some of these hotspot issues that we had before. So again, before you start to get too crazy about adjusting some of your lights and other things like that, maybe just try dropping in a new material and see if that helps a little bit. You will notice that I haven't done any sort of material or texturing work yet. I find that by starting off with just some basic lighting, it really starts to help the material and texturing process unfold a little bit more smoothly, because now I can start to tailor some of the darkness, the lightness, reflectiveness, matte coloration. I can start to really kind of tailor make all my materials to the lighting setup that I have now. Now, once we have our portal lights in place, one of the things that we can do that's really nice is the fact that we can maybe come in here and start to just do a little bit of customization. Right now, all of these portal lights are at pretty much even intensity, which doesn't really make for a very interesting lighting situation. So we can come in here and grab some of these individual portal lights, go into their modifiers list here, and let's start to maybe take some of the intensity or the multiplier parameters and bump these up. So let's say maybe I wanted to take this one up to a value of 2, so that way I get maybe just a little bit more light back here. This is actually the light that is back behind, that's casting some light forward. So maybe that'll give me a little bit more bright result back in here. We might even take maybe this portal light that is responsible for some of the light on this side of the room, and maybe even bring that down a little bit, just to give us a little bit more contrast in our lighting here. So I'll try maybe something like 0.5 or 0.6. Now let's re-render this. There we go, and you can see that now starts to bring out just a little bit more brightness from some of the light that's shining kind of along this back wall. And again, maybe takes a little bit more of the illumination out of this side of the room and kind of focuses a little bit more of our attention through lighting a little bit more over here, kind of in this central focus area. Now, looking at this, now that we have this kind of a gray material on here, it gives us a little bit better chance to see some of the overall lighting coloration. So right now, these portal lights are grabbing a lot of that blue color from the sky and piping it into the room. So this room has maybe a little bit more of a blue color than what I might like. So what I might do is come in and grab this sunlight. With that selected, let's scroll down, and I'm looking for this haze. Right now, this is set to have absolutely zero haze, which in real life is actually sort of rare. You'll typically have particles and other things in the atmosphere that are scattering light, and as a result of that light scattering, you start to get light that actually changes color just a little bit based on the wavelength disturbances and things like that. So if I start to come in here and add maybe just a little bit more haze into our sky, and then re-render that, we can now start to get rid of a little bit more of that artificial blue coloration and start to replace that with something that is a little bit more subdued. In this case, I'm starting to get now a little bit more of a yellow kind of tint into this, which again would probably be a little bit more comparable to something that is going to be sort of early part of the day. But overall, I really just find this coloration to now be a lot more natural compared to what I had before. So looking at this, you can also start to see that maybe we don't have quite the detail in our shadows that we might want. So areas like the underside of this couch, where we start to have these curtains make contact with the wall, we really don't have these really sharp shadow details. Now, a lot of this can be fixed by adding a higher final gather resolution, but by doing that, it's going to really start to slow down our scenes a lot. So at this point, though, I'm really not going to worry about this process too much, or these little shortfalls, because I can always come back and start to bump these up later. So right now I'm really, though, more concerned with having a render that comes back a little bit faster. So I'm going to leave these little details and things like that for a little bit later. What I will, though, go ahead and do is maybe start to introduce a little bit more of a final gather bounce. So that can be found right down here underneath our final gather bounces. By default, it's going to be set to 0, but it really doesn't start to look very natural, especially in some of these areas here. We should probably get a little bit more light that's bouncing and providing a little bit more soft, sort of indirect lighting in some of these areas. So by introducing maybe just one additional final gather bounce, I think we'll find that that starts to give us something that is quite a bit more realistic and overall just much more natural. There we go. So that's now going to brighten up our scene just a little bit more, and again, just help spread a little bit more of that illumination around. Now, again, we do start to see some of these areas where we probably don't have the amount of detail in some of these shadows that we might want, but again, we can always come back and fix those with some higher quality render settings. But for now, just for the sake of speed, I'm going to go ahead and just leave things as they are. Now, in my next lesson, now that we have this rough lighting setup, we can now start to focus our attention on some of the texturing and some of the material application for some of these different objects.